Rashi, on the beginning of this week's Parsha, the weekly reading Vayishlach, says something that has, in my opinion, quite a lot to do with the situation, the dilemma that Israel faced in the current hostage deal. So I wanted to discuss first this Rashi, and then a few words about my humble opinion about the hostage deal. So this Rashi is very well known, it's very well quoted. It comes from Chazal, from Midrash Rabbah, and from Tanhuma, that when Yakov, it says, was afraid when he found out that Eisav is going in his direction with 400 men, he realized it's very likely Eisav has very bad intentions. He might just kill the entire Jewish people at the time, entire Jewish people, the proto-Jewish people, we might call it, before the giving of the Torah. It wasn't clear exactly what the status was of our forefathers, to what extent we could say they were Jewish, because Judaism is defined by giving of the Torah. But whatever the case may be, our forefather Yakov, together with all of his people, his children and everybody with him, may have been killed by Eisav. That's at least what he was afraid of. And the verse says that he was afraid, and he also was upset, you could call it maybe. So possibly the reason for this drasha, why the Chazal even darshan this way, is because of the order of these words. Why it says first he was afraid, and then he was upset. Upset is less than afraid in a sense. So the darshan, at least according to Rashi's girsa, that he was afraid that he can get killed. Okay, that we can understand very well. But he also was upset if he has to kill. If he ends up killing Eisav, it's also not a good idea. So I think this Rashi and the general approach of Jewish people, it's extremely important to understand why Jews are so reluctant to go to war. There's a different Rashi, also based on Chazal, in also the beginning of our Parsha, that says that Yakov prepared for three things. He, of course, prayed to Hashem, and he prepared to try to bribe Eisav and to resolve the issue in the most humble way, some kind of a way to pacify the wicked man. And only as a third option, he prepared for war, if there won't be any other choice. And as I said, based on what Rashi and Chazal say, Yaakov saw the war, of course, as the worst of the three, the worst result on if there's absolutely no other choice, because, of course, in the war, even if you win, even if you kill, it's also not a good thing. So this explains the general position of Israel today. I think when we read the words of Torah, a lot of times we could see exactly that this week's Parsha exactly is talking about the very situation we're in. Of course, it's not I don't decide anything here. I live in America, but whatever the case may be, the people who make these decisions, in particular, here is the very difficult dilemma. In order to save some of the hostages, Israel has to release 3 times as many prisoners. So I have seen some rabbis claim that you're not allowed to do that because the released prisoners, even though some are considered children, but children, I mean, a 16-year-old can still kill. All of these people, a lot of these people can come back to terrorism. All of these are people who, at least, could have killed in the past. Some of them actually, they're not releasing anybody who actually did kill, but they're releasing people who, quite a number of people who tried to kill, just didn't succeed. So if, for instance, an Arab girl tried to slaughter a woman in front of her children, but thankfully the woman survived. So she was serving her time in Israeli jail, and now she's being released. So, of course, the thing everybody's afraid of is what if they will start killing again? So we're basically releasing people who will kill others in order to save some of the people who are now in Gaza, whereas if Israel continues the military operation, there's a good chance that they may be able to save those people in Gaza anyway, without having to release terrorists. By the way, it's surprising, but I guess we shouldn't be surprised at anything anymore, is that the Western press and various channels basically make an equivalency again the little babies that are released by Hamas and the terrorists that are released by Israel. So, okay, women and children released by Israel. One second. A 16-year-old or an 18-year-old is a child. He or she tried to kill somebody. This is not, even if they're, relatively speaking, according to many countries' laws today, 18-year-old is considered below the age of execution, let's say, even in the countries where they do have death penalty. A lot of times they don't administer death penalty to somebody who is less than 18. But that doesn't mean they're not a danger to society. But in my opinion, I think Israel is doing the right thing in this case. And it's not a surprise, like I said. Israel will do anything to try to resolve things peacefully. I mean, that's what Israel has been doing with Hamas until now, actually. The policy was always to pacify. They tried the way of Yakov, and if Hamas would have been like Eisav, it would have worked. The problem is Hamas is not like Eisav. Hamas is more like Amalek. And that's why the pacification policy didn't work. So from October 7th, it's more or less understood that with Hamas, there's no way to negotiate. But with regards to saving some hostages now, in return for releasing some of these terrorists, you have to understand that, for one thing, they're not serving lifetime anyway. So if one of the main reasons why altogether criminals are in jail is in order to protect society so they don't come out and come back to their crimes, then these people being released at any rate, they would come out. Some of them 2 years from now, some of them just a few months from now. Many of the people released, they're coming out soon anyway. So if we're afraid that they'll come back to terrorism, then the question should have been before, why are they given such light sentences just because they didn't succeed in actually killing someone? If they tried to kill or didn't succeed in killing, why should they be not given a lifetime? But whatever the case may be, Israel has incredibly lenient laws in terms of, in general, how it treats terrorists and in terms of what they get in jail. So whatever the case may be, in my humble opinion, as many hostages as they can release now, even if it's in a ratio 3-to-1. I wouldn't be for the deal with Shalit, where over 1,000 terrorists with blood in their hands were released for one person. And of course, they have killed numerous people since then, and the whole October 7th may have never happened if they weren't all released. But that's a completely different story now. They're not releasing anybody with blood in their hands. They're not releasing 1,000-to-1 ratio, but only 3-to-1. And I think that this is the right thing to do. And in general, whether it's right or wrong, we cannot talk to emotions. And Jewish people are incredibly kind and emotional over these issues. And that's why they're willing to do this. And I understand why they're willing to do this, why the majority of Israeli parties voted for releasing these terrorists who didn't kill anybody, even though some of them attempted to kill. But the hope is that this is the right thing to do. At least this is what the people feel. But it's not the brain here that decides. Apparently, it's the heart, and the heart of the Jewish people is definitely with the hostages, and especially the babies that are being brought back, the old people. So I personally think that the words of Rashi apply here to a large extent, even though, like I said, it's not a halachic statement here, but the idea that we try our best to avoid war when we can, and the idea that it's very difficult for the Jewish people to kill even really, really bad people. If war could be avoided, it would have been ideal. Unfortunately, with Hamas, it's not an option. Israel tried that, and Hamas is not Eisav, and unfortunately, the only way is to continue war. Just like with Nazis, the Allies, of course, knew there would be a lot of civilian casualties at the end of World War II. Many Germans were killed, but this is just, unfortunately, the only way. And by the way, it was a lot easier for the Allies in the end of World War II than today for Israel, because Nazis didn't store their weapons in hospitals, in kindergartens. It's only Hamas that's doing that. So it's very unfortunate, but obviously the responsibility lies on those who put the weapons of destruction in places of civilians. So So Israel will try to do whatever it can to minimize civilian casualties, but really there is no way to completely avoid civilian casualties. It simply does not. Unfortunately, they haven't invented a weapon that just somehow targets only the bad people or destroys only the rocket launch systems without destroying anything else. That's why there's unfortunately damage to the population that maybe to some extent is not affiliated with Hamas. Now, of course, a lot of people that Hamas claims that are being killed that are civilian or children, it actually could be Hamas fighters. A lot of them don't fight in uniform, and it's quite often that Hamas uses them as a proof that Israel is killing so many supposedly civilians. How do you define a civilian? If right now he just threw away his automatic gun at the moment, or somebody took it away already after he's dead, and they show him, oh, here's a body of a civilian, an 8-year-old boy who had a gun, but now it's taken away from him for the picture. Or a person who just died for any other reason. In a 2 million population for over a month period, people die for all kinds of reasons. Just statistically, there are lots and lots of people dead during more than a month when the population is 2 million people. At least a few thousand people. So how does Hamas count those? They're also dead because of Israel, according to them. I'm not even talking about the cases when Hamas or Islamic Jihad's rockets and land on their own territory. There's a huge percentage of their rockets that explode on their own territory. And again, they count it all as those that are killed by Israel. So the numbers of Hamas are totally unreliable. And the fact that Joe Biden actually apologized for earlier saying that Hamas numbers are not reliable, I think is shocking that he would apologize over not believing Hamas. We're not talking about not believing in theory if there would be a legitimate health authority in Gaza, but we're talking about Hamas-affiliated health authority whose numbers are obviously dictated by Hamas, and those numbers are totally unreliable. But whatever the case may be, obviously there will be some civilians and some, unfortunately, children who will get killed, like in any other war. But Israel goes out of its way much more than any other country under similar circumstances, more than America, more than NATO alliance, more than anybody else under similar circumstances. During the taking of Mosul, fighting against ISIS, just recently, a similar number of civilians and children was killed. And it was a lot easier there than in Gaza, with all this Hamas infrastructure right in the middle of hospitals and kindergartens and the tunnels and everything else. Israel is facing a far more difficult task. And unfortunately, the media, at least the leftist media for the most part, keeps blaming Israel. And on this I'm going to end. If you like this video, please press like, and please subscribe to our channel.